Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for coming to today's show, everybody. Hey, and if this is your first time here, why don't you stick around, see if you like the vibe, and maybe you'll become a whiskey friend too. But on today's episode, I'm pretty excited to get into this. We got the Bardstown Discovery Series 9. This one just came out. I still see 8 on the shelves around me, and they got quite a bit of it, so that might be hanging around for a while. So before this starts hitting everyone else's areas, once the 8 dries up, wanted to get the review out there, tell you my thoughts, and maybe this influences you on whether to buy this or not. Thanks for joining, everybody. Let's kick off the show. All right. There we go. Still got the plastic corks. It's got a little heft to it, but still not what it used to be. So let's pour a little bit of it here. For today's tasting, we have a ADHD whiskey glass. Cheers, Matt. So for Bardstown Discovery 9, I have been into these almost since the start back in 2020 when these first started coming out. Maybe it was even late 2019 at this point. I jumped on board with Discovery 3, which is one of my favorite pours, like ever. Then Discovery 4 was really, really good. I later got some samples of Discovery 2 to find out that one was a hitter as well. But then with release 5, that's where things started breaking down a little bit for me. Once I got a sample of 5, I actually didn't buy 5 at all. The Dickel on it was just too overwhelming for me. 6 brought me back to the table. 7 was a good comeback. 8 I really enjoyed. And now we're getting into 9, and we're going to break this one down. But one thing that has been occurring is that these have been getting more and more expensive. When I first bought Discovery 3, it was $120. Now they want $150 for Discovery 9. And at the same time that the price is increasing, the average age on some things is kind of decreasing as well, or the sources are becoming a little bit less traditional. We'll put it that way. So if you go back to Discovery 3 and 4, speculatively, you're talking about some really great bourbons, maybe from Heaven Hill, from MGP, from Turkey, from Barton. They're blending all these things together and creating special things. But then around 5, as I said, the Dickel entered the picture. Then by 6 and 7, we started getting more of Indiana rye, some 6-year rye in there, 8-year ryes in there. Got some Boo ryes going on. And now with this Discovery 9, we probably have the strangest combination of all of them. So let's go through the stats on this one before we go through the tasting notes. It is 112.5 proof, so it's got a nice heft to it. 35% Georgia 8-year. And that is a 4-grain product on top of that, a 4-grain bourbon. Then we got 31% Kentucky 12-year, 19% Tennessee 17-year. I know that one's going to catch some people's eyes. And then 15% Ontario 12-year corn whiskey. So essentially a 12-year light whiskey is backing this up with some sweetness and some heft to that proof. So very interesting combinations of barrels. Before I even bought this thing, I knew Kelsey got it. And I was like, should I buy this? And Kelsey was like, yeah, buy it. It's like, asked him again the next day. You sure I should buy that? Because that looks really weird on paper. It's like, no, I'll go buy it. You'll like it. Well, we'll put that to the test. We'll see if we like it after this. So with this unique mash bill, just becomes that part of like, what am I buying for $150? So let's break that down. I'm going to go into the tasting notes here. The way we do it here, I'll go through the nose and then I'll go through the taste. Front of the palate, mid palate, back of the palate. Let you know the flavors I'm getting. And as I go through that experience, that's not just to tell you what I'm tasting. Hopefully you get this bottle. You can do it side by side. See if you agree with the tasting notes or not. See if you get the same hits that I get. Even if you don't get the same things I get, that might lean you towards into understanding what you do get. And that might improve how you taste whiskey and come up with your own palate style anyway. So there's some things to be learned in both agreement and disagreement as you go back and forth with someone else's tasting notes. Then at the end of this video, I will officially score this. This will be a new thing that we're doing on the channel. We now got a database that we're going to keep track of these. That way we can do comparisons as the years goes on, see what's a higher scoring pour than others. And then there's some other ways I'm going to break things down that were requests from other whiskey friends as we've done different tastings. So let's get into the tasting notes before we get into any official scores. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for joining me this far. Man, I struggle with this nose. I've gone back to this one now a few times since I wanted to officially score it and really put my thought process into it. And I continue to walk away with lower expectations on the nose. First, it hits me even like there's a craft product that's kind of being hidden. And I immediately pointed to Georgia, and I have no way of knowing what that Georgia is. If you do know the source of that Georgia, let me know. I've been trying to look that up online, and I've been getting a whole bunch of speculative stuff. But then when the 4-grain part of it comes into play, that really confuses people. Even on Reddit, I saw a few times people were saying that it was a distillery that's not even making any whiskey anymore, and that they must have just had an old barrel from this distillery that's gone. So weird stories on that one. But if you know the Georgia one, let me know. But on the whiskey, when I say craft, there's a few different flavor hits I get when I say something's crafty. Either I'm saying that it has this like almost bubblegum smell, or sometimes I get like the sawdust. When it comes to the wood itself, it almost has a sawdust smell rather than that deep, rich oak that I'm looking for. And that's really the surprising thing about this nose more than anything else. There's kind of a fresh oak there. You get the sawdust, but for something that is essentially 65% between 12 and 17 years, I would have expected to get more oak off the nose. And then I don't get a whole lot of fruits coming off of it. I do get a little hint of cherry and then some vanilla frosting, but nothing else to really hang my hat on when it comes to this nose. All right. So I don't dig that part too much. Let's get into the taste, though. Mm. Mm. See, it does rebound on the taste, and we're going to go through that. Go to the front of the palate first. Man, rich, oily, very, very good to great mouthfeel. So love that part of it. Really coats the tongue really well. And up front, it's kind of a little bit of a fruit bomb. You get the fruit and you get the cinnamon almost immediately on the tip of the tongue. And the fruits I would even describe as like fruity pebbles. I know some people go to the Flintstone vitamins when it comes to the Dickel, so I'm not using that as any type of joke there. But no, literally like a fruity pebble cereal. So all those different dynamic fruits I'm getting. And maybe there's a little bit of artificialness to it, but that actually wipes away by the time it gets to mid palate. Mm. Then just an awesome, the finish is really good too. Awesome berry blast right at mid palate. I think that's one of my favorite aspects of this one. Raspberries, cherries, blueberries. I mean, I'm going all the way across the board there when I say it's a berry blast, going back to that fruity pebbles. The vanilla lingers, the cinnamon lingers, bit of pepper. Really like what it's doing. And then as we get to the finish, what's really enjoyable about this is it escalates at mid palate and it really starts giving you a lot of flavors. And then when you hit the finish, it takes a long time for it to drop off the volume. Like it sticks at a really good flavor volume for quite a bit of the time in the finish. So that part of it is impressive. And those berries just keep coming. Mm. Yeah, and the finish again, I've already mentioned the vanilla frosting and that berry blast. I guess what enters the picture too, come the finish, is going to be some nice chocolate. So I just really enjoy what this has going on. Just a very enjoyable sipper. So that part of it does impress me, despite everything that I said about the nose. So let's pull up the official scores here and we'll break it down. So when we're getting into the official scores, I got this all summarized. There's a whole bunch of scores going on behind the scenes here with all these different categories, but really I'm going to break it down into just 3 for you. Flavor, that's worth 40% of the score. Experience is 50%. Value is 10. So just to explain that quickly, when I'm talking about the flavor, it's everything I'm describing. Am I enjoying it at every step of the process? The nose, the front palate, mid palate, back of the palate on the finish. Am I enjoying that flavor? Yes or no? Then for the experience score, you get more into the technique of the whiskey. You know, does it have that nice mouthfeel? Does it have good balance? Does it have complexity? Does it have a long finish? You know, those are the type of things looking for in the experience score. And then the value score. I do think it's important to put value into these reviews. It's only worth 10%, so it can only move the needle so much. But is it worth the price paid? And I think that's a big factor when it comes to recommending whiskeys and scoring these things. So in the end, this comes down to a 77 out of 100. That's going to be very good in this scoring system. If it gets to 80, that's when we're talking about a great pour. 90, amazing pour. So it is sitting there at a very good pour. When it comes to the recommend, I was specifically requested that I start doing this on a 0 to 10 scale or some type of scale because I was just saying yes or no. So if you're just above essentially the midway point, I'm saying yes to everything. I recommend everything. It just depends on the context. So let's go over it here. I'm kind of hedging my bet here. I'm giving it a 7. Who am I going to recommend this to? I'm going to recommend this to people that are already into the Discovery Series. This is going to be a good one to put in the collection. But man, I don't think I would recommend this to somebody to get into Discovery for the very first time, especially for them to pay $150 and really take that leap. I can't put my entire backbone behind it, thus hedging the bet at 7. And another important question people ask me to start putting into these reviews, do I plan to buy another? I thought that was a pretty astute question to ask somebody. Really put your mouth where your money is, right? Like you already put up 150 for it. Would you do another 150 and bunker one of these and have one for when it's gone? The answer on this particular one is no. I'll be one on done on this. Hopefully I have enough to compare it when Discovery 10 comes out, but otherwise this is probably its most useful point on the shelf. It's just not going to be on my shelf for very much longer. It probably won't last into any of my end of the year awards or blinds or anything like that. So just a very, very good, enjoyable sipper, but as you can see, it is overpriced. Now, with that said, think about how close it is for me to put it up in the 80s and saying it's very great. Just a little bit more on the nose, just take it down to 130, 120, and my tone changes a little bit, and that recommend score probably goes up as well. So everything's always within context. So keep that in mind. The other thing that I looked into was if I were to recommend something that's kind of giving similar flavors, it has a similar profile, what would I recommend? And the main things that kind of came to mind were ECBP, Russell single barrel, and even Bullet single barrels. Once again, all of those things, much cheaper alternatives to this. So when I'm saying I'm comparing it to those things, once again, that plays into that recommend score too. So thank you for joining me today, everybody. Hopefully you learned something. Let me know if you're going to get Discovery 9 or not, what you think in the comments. And if you know where that George is coming from, it's really driving me crazy. So let me know where that 4 grain is coming from if you got a hook on that. But otherwise, stay tuned for a future episode here. I am going to be comparing this head-to-head with Discovery 8 and give a recommendation. If you could only buy one, which one would it be? Looking forward to seeing you again. Bye, Whiskey Friends.